a week after a lawsuit was filed against him by two women accusing him of sexual misconduct. The Washington franchise went through several allegations of sexual misconduct and harassment in the workplace under former owner Dan Snyder. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
When I move my body, I feel like freedom. Happy anniversary, KBLA.
The only black talk radio station west of the Mississippi.
And they wondered if a black talk radio station would work in Southern California.
Y'all did it!
Well, KBLA Talk 1580 toasts its third anniversary on Juneteenth, and you're invited to celebrate with us.
Hey, Tavis Smiley, y'all the bomb!
All you have to do is go to KBLA1580.com right now and sign up. Admission is free, but mandatory, and space is limited. Once we reach capacity, we'll have to cut off the online registration, but it's open right now.
Oh, my God.
So don't delay.
Thank you guys for being the best at what you do.
Log on to KBLATalk1580.com right now and register to join us for an afternoon of good music, good people, and good vibes.
Happy anniversary.
Wednesday, June 19th, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. We will provide the food and drink, but be sure to bring your low-back chairs, blankets, and your personal picnic baskets.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Let's celebrate 3 years of being the most trusted, credible, and reliable source of news and information.
We love you, KBLA.
We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're black and stride again.
Black and stride again.
Happy anniversary.
Little child running wild. Watch a while. You see, he never smiled. Broken home, father gone, mama tired. So is all alone.
This is June, and June, as you well know, is Black Music Month. And so, as we do every June, we will feature the music of a particular artistic genius every day this month. And today, that artist is none other than Curtis Mayfield. So all 3 hours of today's program, we're playing some of the best of Curtis Mayfield, and he sounds as good as ever. In this hour, a conversation with educator, leader, and author Brian Rashad Fuller about disrupting the school-to-prison pipeline. His new book is titled Being Black in America's Schools, a Student Educator Reformer's Call for Change. A lot of titles there. We'll unpack every one of those. Student, Educator, Reformer. His name again is Brian Rashad Fuller, and I'm honored to have him on this program. Brian, how are you today, sir?
I'm good, Tavis. How are you doing?
If I complained, I'd be an ingrate, man. I'm doing well, and glad to have you. Glad to have you on this program. Let me start with some broad, overarching questions, and then we'll get more specific as we track the pages of your new text. Let me start again with a couple broad themes. What would you say? How would you define or describe what it is like in real time today, this contemporary moment, to be black in America's schools?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And before I even answer, I wanted to say thank you, of course, for having me today. I'm honored to be here. And yeah, I would say that what is it like to be black in America's schools today is the same, in my opinion, that it's been for the past century. It is challenging to say the least. I think that there are extreme opportunity gaps that our Black students experience within our education system. There are disciplinary disparities that they are facing against every single day. The criminalization of their being, their bodies, and then most importantly, in this current day and age, there's a lack of inclusive curriculum. So they're not able to see themselves in what their teachers are teaching them. And they're not able to see the contributions that they've contributed to our society and really understand their dynamic history. And so the state of Black education is the same that it's always been. And I think that the attack on public education and the attack specifically on Black education now is pretty dire.
It's a brilliant answer, brilliant in the sense that it gives me a lot to work with, and I want to follow you as I will throughout this entire hour. Let me just take each of those 4 points you just made one at a time and give you an opportunity to unpack a bit more about why those 4 things made your list. When I ask you what it's like these days being Black in America's schools, my note suggests to me that the first thing you said in response to that question was that there are extreme opportunity gaps. Talk to me about these extreme opportunity gaps that you referenced a moment ago.
Yep. So when I say opportunity gap, what I'm referring to is educational opportunities within our schools. And so what we know is that Black students right now are more likely to be in a school that has a police officer or a resource officer, but not a school counselor, right? And so that right there is an extreme educational disparity. Also, Black students are less likely to be placed in gifted and talented courses. And as we know, when you are in those gifted and talented courses, so that's advanced placement, those courses teach a different curriculum, a more advanced curriculum. Also, they offer different educational opportunities such as particular field trips, and just the classroom experience is different. So in those particular classrooms, so there's a lot more room for dialogue between the student and the teacher. There's a lot more room for innovation and creativity. And oftentimes many of our Black students don't experience this in their educational experience. And so, and then along with that, there's extreme lack of resources that lead to a lack of those educational opportunities too. Black students majority are in low resource schools across the country. Their teachers are not as professionally developed or not as highly trained as their white counterparts. And so the list goes on in terms of just the educational and the opportunity gaps that our Black and brown students are experiencing within our educational system today.
His book is called Being Black in America's Schools, a student educator reformer's call for change. In case you've just tuned in, I asked him moments ago how he would define or describe what it means these days to be Black in America's schools. He was ready for that question and fired right back with 4 answers that need to be unpacked. His first answer was extreme opportunity gaps exist for Black students in America's schools. He just unpacked that. The other 3 we'll tackle when we come forward. Disciplinary disparities, criminalization of both their being and their bodies, and the fourth one is that there's not inclusive curriculum for these students. So a lot to unpack. Just getting started in this hour, talking about being Black today in America's schools. Our guest is Brian Rashad Fuller as we continue our celebration in June, Black Music Month, of Curtis Mayfield on Tavis Smiley.
You're really something, say it. You're really something, child. You're really something, say it. You're really something, child.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
Not feeling like yourself lately? Has your weight loss plateaued? If so, it's time to embrace the D-Herbs Full Body Cleanse, a cleansing regimen that can help you lose 10 to 30 pounds in just 20 days. The D-Herbs Cleanse also boosts your immune system, improves your mental clarity, clears up your skin, and improves your digestion. This cleanse is like a factory reset for your health. The Full Body Cleanse is a great way to propel you into a healthier lifestyle, and with summer just around the corner, never a better time to initiate that weight loss and reboot your system than right now. So go to dherbs.com and order your Full Body Cleanse today, or call 866-434-3727. Enter KBLA 1580 at checkout for a discount. D-Herbs, experience healing.
Cookie wants to be a professional wrestler.
I'm Cookie Serratos and I'm 11 years old.
She also wants to win all the medals. That's why Cookie and her family make every day count, squeezing out her best with Go-Go Squeeze.
Okay, Cookie, let's break for a Go-Go Squeeze.
Go-Go Squeeze Fruit on the Go pouches are a nutritious snack made from 100% fruit with no sugar added.
Go, Cookie!
Because when you nurture your kids, you squeeze out the best in them. Squeeze out the best with Go-Go Squeeze. Not a low-calorie food. Products range from 11 to 13 grams of sugar and 60 to 70 calories per serving.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer whenever I want? Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. 94% of Sleep Number smart sleepers report better sleep. J.D. Power ranks Sleep Number #1 in customer satisfaction with mattresses purchased in-store. And now save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. For J.D. Power 2023 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com.
Getting quality employees to fill positions in your company is essential, but finding those people can be a major hassle unless you use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes finding quality people a breeze. ZipRecruiter's advanced technology identifies candidates with the right skills, sends you great matches, then you can easily invite them to apply. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See for yourself. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/free to try ZipRecruiter for free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
I'm getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20, a Pfizer vaccine.
So am I, because I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine. It can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just 1 dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
We gotta have peace to keep the world alive and war to cease. We gotta have joy, true in our hearts with strength we can't destroy. People hear us. The world knows there's no choice. We're begging, save the children.
June gives us a good excuse to do what we like doing anyway, which is playing good music as much as we can in this talk format. We love talking, but we love good music, and we love good black music. And June is Black Music Month, so every day this month, we'll be giving you all kinds of good music. As we move in and out of these conversations, in and out of these segments, you'll be hearing a different artist and their repertoire every single day this month. And today, that person is Curtis Mayfield, and we're glad about it. Back now to our conversation with our guest, Brian Rashad Fuller, who's author that is, of the new book, Being Black in America's Schools, a student, educator, reformer's call for change. We'll unpack those 3 roles, those 3 hats he has worn: student, educator, reformer. We'll do that as we move through this hour. But I want to finish now working through this list of the first answer that Brian gave me to the very first question that I posed. And that is to get a better sense. Many of you have been out of school for a long time. I ain't calling you old. I'll call you, be kinder and gentler, chronologically gifted. You are so chronologically gifted these days that you ain't been in school in a long time. And so I wanted to get a sense of what it is like being black right now, today, in America's schools. And I asked that question, and Brian gave me 4 answers. The first was that there are extreme opportunity gaps that exist for black children. Of course, if you ain't been in school in a while, and I keep saying the word ain't, so you can tell I ain't been there in a while either. I have not been there in a while myself. But Brian said that it hasn't really changed over the last 100 years. So I can't imagine I got too many listeners who've not been in school over the last 100 years. So maybe this stuff doesn't sound so foreign to you after all. That said, there are extreme opportunity gaps that still exist for black students in America's schools. The second answer to that question, Brian, which I now want you to unpack, is disciplinary disparities. I just had a guest on this program last hour. Her name is Alona Kearney. She's running for governor in Washington State, a black woman running for governor in the state of Washington, and she shared with me that she has homeschooled her children. I said to her, I've interviewed more candidates than I can count, from president on down, over the course of my career. And never, to my mind, to my recollection, have I interviewed a candidate for high office who had homeschooled their children. But that's what Alona Kearney and her husband have done. They have homeschooled their own kids. And she shared that story with me about homeschooling because her son had some disciplinary issues at school, and she was not. She wasn't trying to hear that. And so she brought her babies home. She brought her babies home and took her business into her own hands. But talk to me about these disciplinary disparities. That is the second answer on your list of what it's like to be black in America's school system these days.
Yep. Yeah, and I think just to your point there, a lot of parents are trying to find alternatives because the disciplinary disparities are so great within our school systems. And so when I talk about the disciplinary disparities, so many of the schools that black and brown students are in today have something called zero tolerance policy. And so what that means is for any minor infraction, that is, they're being willfully defiant, they not only receive, a punishment, but oftentimes that punishment leads to suspension and eventually expulsion. And black students are, some are saying, as of recent numbers, 3 times more likely to be suspended than their white counterparts. And then some recent numbers are a little over 2 times, but the disparity is still there. And it's not only that they're more likely to be suspended, but they're more likely to be suspended for the same behaviors. And so this idea that a white student can essentially disrupt a classroom in a way, but receive a lesser punishment than a black student is extremely problematic, and introduces our black students, to the criminal justice system early on, which is the basis of the school to prison pipeline or the school to prison nexus. Yep. And so that is, when I talk about the disciplinary disparities, that's what I'm referring to.
Yep. And that takes us straight into the criminalization, as you put it, of both their being and their bodies. I mentioned, again, speaking of our prior guest and her homeschooling her children, that led me to share a story with her about a documentary that I did some years ago, Brian, for PBS, about the way we have criminalized these kids in our school system. And that documentary took me straight into what you mentioned a moment ago, this notion of zero tolerance, which I found laughable. And I ended up, the more I got into this, the more I realized that was really the epicenter, that was going to be the core of the documentary that I did for PBS, this notion of zero tolerance. These are babies. These are children. Yeah. How would you like to be told in your childhood that there's zero tolerance for you making a mistake? There's zero tolerance for you making a bad decision. There's zero tolerance for you not getting it right the first time. Zero tolerance was a bad idea when they thought about it. And that idea came up, for those who've been around for a while, it came up after Columbine. You'd all recall many, many years ago, the tragedy at Columbine. And then every school system in the country, it seems, brought on this notion, this narrative of zero tolerance. Well, if you can't make a mistake as a child, when can you make a mistake? We don't have zero tolerance. We don't have zero tolerance for adults. And I know a bunch of adults who make mistakes all the time. I made one yesterday. I'm glad there ain't zero tolerance for me. But this notion that we would say that there's zero tolerance for any mistake that a child makes doesn't allow them, one, to be children. It doesn't allow them to learn from their mistakes. It doesn't allow them to grow. You make a mistake, we kick you out. And as you know, most of those who get subjected to this notion of zero tolerance happen to be black and brown babies. And so I know a bit about this, having done this documentary. So I'm glad that Brian raised this notion again of zero tolerance. The good news is, as I've been following this and tracking this, that a number of school systems have become a little bit wiser since that era. And so there are school systems now, school districts and systems that are backing off of that a bit and trying to put some more nuance into the decisions they make about who gets kicked out, who gets disciplined, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not as stuck on stupid as we once were when it comes to this notion of zero tolerance. But that takes us straight, disciplinary disparities takes us straight into a conversation now, the third answer on Brian's list, about what it's like being black in today's schools. Criminalization of both their being and their body. I've never heard it quite put that way. I like the frame. Tell me more.
Yeah, and so in my book, I talk a lot. I actually start off talking about me seeing my father incarcerated when I was 3 years old. And I start the book like that because it is important for us to ground ourselves in the carceral nature of our education system, especially being black and brown within the educational system, and how that leads to the further carceral nature of being black in the American society. And so when I talk about this criminalization of students' beings and bodies, it refers to seeing our black and brown students as less than innocent, right? And in my book, I reference a study called The Essence of Innocence that was done by Harvard, and where they talk about how black and brown students, but black students the most, are seen older than they actually are by their educators and by adults within their society. And so what that means is, you have a 10-year-old black student who is disrupting, but the teacher sees them as a 14-year-old, or sees them as much more, how you mentioned, Tavis, they're babies, but they're not being seen as babies. And then so therefore, we know the tropes that are out there about black criminalization in our American society, our broader American society, and many people have talked about that and researched. There's a lot of research out there on that, but that's then being placed on our children. And so in school systems, you have, in a lot of these, zero tolerance, or even in the schools that you talk about that have progressed to some extent, you still have these policies where students have to be and we're talking about elementary students here, where they have to be silent in the hallways, and they have to be sitting without movement in their classrooms, and tracking the teacher every time the teacher moves from one side of the classroom to the next. And so in this way, it's this sense of control, like controlling the movement and controlling every aspect of a child to ensure that they don't get out of control, right? Or you have to maintain them in control because you see them as inherently criminal or inherently bad, and so you have to be punitive and very strict in nature to make sure that they can actually learn. And I just completely disagree with that, but that is what many of our black and brown children are experiencing in today's schools.
Yep. I wouldn't ask this question except for the fact that, one, you referenced it, but more to the point, it is, in fact, how your book starts. I have your book right here in front of me. You've been going through it for days now, preparing for our conversation. And I wanted to get there, but since you went there, let me follow you right now. You do start the book talking about what it was like for you being just a baby yourself and seeing your father behind bars. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I start the book off at the age of 3. Then that was one of my earliest memories that I actually have. And it is a time where I'm visiting my father in county jail. He had been arrested in Richmond, Virginia, and so he was in Chesterfield County Jail at the time. And a 3-year-old, you can imagine a 3-year-old is viewing their parent, their father, a 3-year-old boy, especially who sees his father as his hero, is seeing his father behind a partition, a glass partition, and seeing him powerless, essentially. And I remember vividly being there, seeing my father behind that glass partition, but then looking at the glass partitions next to my father, and they were all black men who looked like me. And so one of my first memories is seeing the older version of myself and my father, but then in these other men being essentially inherently bad or being deemed as bad. And the reason I started the book that way is because I wanted to ground the reader in this broader idea of the black criminalization that happens within our society. And of course, Michelle Alexander has talked about this in the new Jim Crow,
Sure.
As well as Ava DuVernay with her documentary 13th, and even most recently, in the movie Origins that comes from the book Cast, where it talks about this idea that black people are inherently criminals. And our children, because I was one at the time, one of a little under 1 million kids and who had black kids who had a parent incarcerated within that year. That number has now grown to almost 3 million. And this is constantly being perpetuated, right? And so there are, in my mind, and I strongly believe that there are strong links between the way that we educate in our schooling of black and brown kids that lead to the mass incarceration of black and brown people. And so that is why I wanted to start the book that way.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question, and I'm looking at my clock now. I'm only going to have about 45 seconds for you to respond to it. So let me just tee it up now. Let me tee it up now, Brian. When we come forward, I'll give you a chance to respond to it. Before I get to the last thing on this list of 4 responses you gave me for what it's like to be black in America's schools these days, that 4th response is that there's not an inclusive curriculum. There still is no inclusive curriculum. Students can't see themselves in the lesson plan. They can't see themselves in the readings. We'll talk about that part when we come forward. But I do want to, when we come forward, commence with Brian telling me a bit more about the impact that it has on a student, these millions of black students, when they see their mother or their father behind bars. I'm wondering what impact that has had specifically on Brian Rashad Fuller all these years later. It's been a while because now he's an author. His book is called Being Black in America's Schools, A Student, Educator, Reformer's Call for Change. When we come forward, we'll talk about what it was like and the impact it had on him, seeing his father behind bars. Then we'll talk about why these curricula are not more inclusive when it comes to our babies. You are listening to Brian Rashad Fuller on Tavis Smiley.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Hunter Biden has arrived in a Delaware federal courtroom for his firearms case. Jury selection is underway in the trial of the president's son. Biden is accused of illegally buying and possessing a gun while being addicted to drugs in 2018. Hunter's stepmom, First Lady Jill Biden, and half-sister Ashley Biden are in attendance at the courthouse as well. Well, a Michael Jordan basketball card is worth a lot of money. A 2003 through 2004 Upper Deck Ultimate Collection one-of-one Logo Man card sold for just over $2.9 million. It was the highest price for any Jordan card ever sold. The African-American basketball icon won 6 titles with the Chicago Bulls in the 90s. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Find the perfect Father's Day gift with Macy's Gift Finder. In just a couple clicks, you'll get personalized gift ideas for every dad at every budget. Visit Macy's.com/gift finder and give love today at Macy's.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Simone Biles let the world know she's ready for the Summer Olympics this year in Paris. The 4-time Olympic gold medalist won the all-around competition Sunday at the U.S. Gymnastics Championships for the 9th time in her career. The UCLA women's softball team was eliminated from the World Series. They lost to Stanford in the quarterfinals. UCLA finished a strong season at 43-12. The new ownership group of the NFL Washington Commanders, which includes Magic Johnson, is not going to deal with any drama from players or staff. The Commanders cut place kicker Brandon McManus a week after a lawsuit was filed against him by 2 women accusing him of sexual misconduct. The Washington franchise went through several allegations of sexual misconduct and harassment in the workplace under former owner Dan Snyder. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
If we're the ones disproportionately impacted by these climate catastrophes,
Why should we be silent?
turning up the volume all year long on the climate conversation with KBLA Talk 1580.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Shatterproof, and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. If you're like many people, you may think custom blinds is a job for expensive professionals. Well, at Blindster, if you have a tape measure and a screwdriver, you can install our custom blinds and save big. Plus, we guarantee they'll fit. Blindster.com.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Become a U.S. citizen with the help of the Los Angeles Public Library. Get free and confidential information on immigration and citizenship. Visit lapl.org/NAI to find your nearest library or call us at 213-228-7390. That's lapl.org/NAI or 213-228-7390 and start your path to becoming a U.S. citizen with the help of the Los Angeles Public Library. Call 213-228-7390 or visit lapl.org/NAI.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. He's rooting for everybody black.
Everybody black.
More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
train a-coming. You don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the dealers humming. Don't need no ticket, you just thank the Lord.
We celebrate the legacy of Curtis Mayfield today. June is Black Music Month. And once again, every day this month, we are featuring a different artist of black excellence in their craft throughout all 3 hours of our program. So today, it's Curtis Mayfield. Who knows tomorrow? Who knows the next day? But it's going to be a great month here in June, playing the music of some of the best black artists to ever do it. And once again, we celebrate today the life and legacy and the artistic genius of one Curtis Mayfield. Our conversation continues in this hour with our guest, Brian Rashad Fuller, who's author of the new book called Being Black in America's Schools, a student, educator, reformer's call for change. Pleased to have Brian on this program. Brian, before I move forward, let me go back to what we were talking about a moment ago, and that is your father. You're just a young baby, and what the impact is all these years later of having seen as a child your father incarcerated.
Yeah, and I go through this a lot within the book, and I talk about my journey from that moment at 3 years old, essentially to now, but definitely how it impacted me over the course of my childhood. And so I wanted to just mention here that there's something that, and folks can go on the Center for the Disease Control's website, something called adverse childhood experiences that impact, that they've coined as a traumatic event that occurs in a child's life. And so Black children are, of course, more likely to experience an adverse childhood experience than their white counterparts and other race and ethnic groups. And so an impact of this adverse childhood experience and having a parent incarcerated is listed as one of those experiences is both is psychological, right? So oftentimes children who have adverse childhood experiences experience some form of depression. Also, there are developmental impacts. Children sometimes become more aggressive due to these adverse childhood experiences. And so for myself, and I outline it in the book, I experienced a lot of these things. I talk about, so my father, so I saw him at 3 in the jail. And then later when I was around 8 or 9, my father was sentenced to 27 years in federal prison. And that deeply impacted me to the point where I was feeling a lot of depression as a child and just a lack of self-worth. Even though I was still performing well in school, I didn't feel necessarily good about myself and who I was in society. And so because of that, I attempted to self-harm myself at a young age, at the age of 9, that I talk about in the book. And so oftentimes, and studies show that these children who are experiencing parents who are incarcerated or other similar adverse childhood experiences are affected in both emotional, psychological, and developmental ways that our schools don't necessarily address, right? Like, so me coming into school entering school as a preschooler or in kindergarten, having a parent who was incarcerated, I might show up a little differently than a child who doesn't, right? But if my teacher doesn't take time to develop a relationship and a trusting, nurturing environment with me, but rather just be reactive, then that would just further perpetuate the harm and then lead me potentially into moving into the criminal justice system as well.
First of all, let me just say, pause for a second and say thank you for being so open, so transparent, so honest. You talk about it in the book, but it's another thing to have to relive this every time you have a conversation about your books. I appreciate you being so transparent and so receptive to my question. Now, let me link this to something I was doing yesterday, and it's just ironic. that we're having this conversation today. This obviously was not planned. So yesterday I gave a keynote. I gave a talk yesterday. I had a busy weekend, running around speaking everywhere. But I had busy Sunday. I spoke yesterday in the afternoon at a ceremony celebrating these young black and brown boys, 13 to 18, through this particular Rites of Passage program here in Southern California. It's sponsored by the Time Foundation. You can read about it online, TYME.
Okay.
The Time Foundation, TYME. Founded by a brother named Sean Rector. And the Time Foundation has a program called Boys to Men. It's a Boys to Men program. As I said, it's a Rites of Passage program. I said yesterday to this audience that this is one of the many things that other communities get right that we need to do better at. I think certainly of the Jewish community with the bar mitzvahs and the bat mitzvahs, they get that thing right. That's a beautiful Rites of Passage program for their babies. And we need more of that in the black community, these Rites of Passage programs. So I accepted the invitation to speak to hundreds of folk yesterday, and all these beautiful, brilliant, young, black and brown men, these young men, all suited and booted, their suits and their ties. They all spoke yesterday briefly at this program. We got to meet all of them. And then I took to the stage and talked to them and to their parents and to the educators, all those in the audience, who were encircling them in this embrace of love as they matriculated from this program yesterday. And one of the things very quickly that I talked about, and I thought and prayed long and hard about whether or not I should raise this at a celebration, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to talk to them about what you already know, and that is that the data is incontrovertible in this regard. The group of folk in this country killing themselves faster and more frequently than anybody else are young black boys. For some reason, black boys are killing themselves faster, at a clip faster than anybody else in this country. And I figured that if I'm talking to a room full of young black boys, 13 to 18, and the data is what it is, I did not want to miss the opportunity to say something to them, that we all want to be loved, affirmed, acknowledged in our lives as part of the human condition. And so I metaphorically put my arm around all of them from the stage and gave them a big hug and told them that there's nothing so important, nothing so tragic, nothing so difficult that should ever convince them to self-harm, much less to take their own lives. So I went into that thing yesterday, man, unapologetically and boldly, and we had a serious conversation about this yesterday. Here you come today now talking about this same notion of self-harm, that at one point, because of your own depression about your father, and many of these boys I saw yesterday live in homes where they're absentee fathers, and you attempted to self-harm yourself. When we come forward, I want to ask you point blank, I think you've already answered it, but I want to go a little bit harder on this, and that is, we're talking about your book, Being Black in America's Schools, specifically as it relates to black boys. Are there things that they are being subjected to in this school system, in these school systems presently, that aid and abet their dysfunction, that aid and abet their depression, that aid and abet this notion that they are not worthy, which leads to self-harm, which leads to suicide? Is there a connection between the way these boys are trying to navigate the world and why these numbers are rising so quickly? Is there a connection between the data and what's happening or not for them in the classroom? That's what I want to get to, and more when we come forward with the author of Being Black in America's Schools, Brian Rashad Fuller, who you're listening to right now on Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well-trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Hi, Tavis Smiley here. We're getting closer to June 18th, and time is running out for you to register to join us for our historic symposium live on C-SPAN, Tuesday, June 18th, 4 to 7 p.m. at the California Science Center in Exposition Park. Admission is free, but you must register at KBLA1580.com right now if you want to be in the audience when the nation will see for the first time ever a stage full of brilliant black folk talking about the urgency of now. Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. It's all going down. Well, it's actually all going up. Tuesday, June 18th, 4 to 7 p.m. live from the California Science Center in Exposition Park. Again, admission is free, but we're filling up fast. So if I were you, I would log on right now to KBLA1580.com to reserve your seat. Caring about the climate, caring about the community. We're KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
My friends swim no matter the season, but my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis can sometimes take me out of the moment. Now, thanks to Skyrizi and clear skin, count me in. With Skyrizi, Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. 3 out of 4 people achieve 90% clear skin at 4 months.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Ask your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist-prescribed biologic in psoriasis, and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKYRIZI to learn more.
More honesty than you can handle.
More empowerment than you can imagine.
You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Brian Rashad Fuller, whose new book is called Being Black in America's Schools. We were just talking moments ago about these adverse childhood experiences that many black babies have at some point in their lives. I had them. Brian had it. I'm sure many of you had some sort of adverse childhood experience, but there's a lot more research and data these days on how that impacts us, not just through adolescence, but even into our adulthood and beyond. And so we were talking about his story of seeing his father incarcerated as a 3-year-old and how that got inside of his spirit and the eventual self-harm that he engaged in. Ended up trying to hurt his own self because of the depression and despondency about his particular adverse childhood experience. I haven't gotten yet to this fourth thing that Brian laid out for us, a fourth answer to my question, what it's like being black in America's schools. The fourth answer is that there's not an inclusive curriculum even these days. People don't, our kids, our babies don't see themselves in the curriculum. They don't see themselves in the reading. We'll get to that. All these dots are connected. But my question right quick, Brian, was whether or not there is some connection that we need to be aware of between the data which suggest incontrovertibly, again, that black boys are killing themselves at a faster clip, I should say, than anybody else in this country. What is that about? And is there any connection between that and the ways that they are being treated or maltreated in America's schools?
Yes, 100%. And in my opinion, I think, and I think it leads into the fourth point here too, in not having a lack of inclusive curriculum, not seeing themselves in an empowering way in our curriculum and within our schools. I think historically that has been the case, right? Carter G. Woodson wrote about it in The Miseducation of the Negro in 1933. And we are 91 years later, we are still experiencing that in 2024. And so that is one piece, is not seeing themselves in an empowering way within our educational curriculum, within our public school systems, and then also too a lot of the other things that I touched on earlier in terms of treatment, right? Like, so the disciplinary treatment is skewed in one direction towards Black boys specifically. Black boys are disciplined at a much higher rate than any other demographic within our school systems. Black boys are seen as less innocent than any other demographic within our school system. Also, Black boys are targeted more so. They have studies out there that show where the teacher in a classroom pays most attention, like so where the teacher, his or her, or their attention diverts. And without fail, in these studies, the attention is mostly on the Black boy in the classroom. And the attention is not positive attention, it's attention to make sure, assuming that they will be the most disruptive. And so it could be a white student, a desk over, being disruptive in the same way, but that teacher is more solely focused on the Black boy student to be disruptive, and then therefore punishes them. And so, yes, I think that school is definitely tied into these statistics that you talk about.
Our remaining moments with the author of the book, Being Black in America's Schools, Brian Rashad Fuller, when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth. Speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA CAN also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007 they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA CAN believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Febreze. So my home is also my office, and before I can focus, every room's gotta be clean. That means tidying up and spraying my Febreze Air Mist. Ooh, that's fresh. Febreze Air Mist scents are all high quality. They fight any weird funk, and they give my air an instant boost of freshness. So not only does my home smell good, I feel good too. After I Febreze, it's time to start my day. Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
This is Tavis Smiley in conversation, at least for these last 4 minutes, with our guest in this hour who I've been pleased to have on. His name is Brian Rashad Fuller. His book is called Being Black in America's Schools. A student, educator, reformer's call for change. I promised to get to this. I'm running out of time, Brian. I think one of the things that, as I read your text, one of the things that makes it so informative is that you have been, obviously, all three of these things: student, educator, reformer.
Yep. And I think the book is structured in that way, right? So I take the reader through my experience as a student. So the life cycle of the educational experience from pre-K all the way through college, as a black student, as a black male student going through our public education system. And then I go to the other side of it as an educator. I'm a black educator, black male educator now. And you know, I talk about the experience being a black educator and how I perpetuated some of the same systems, the inherent issues that I experienced as a child, right? Being a part of a system and wanting to do well in a system as an adult and having a job. And I really hold my feet to the fire and pull myself to the carpet in those conversations in talking about that too. And then I moved to the reform piece, right? And I think that's where I am right now, a prime example where I wrote this book. And then also just thinking about how do we start to collectively move the needle forward. And so in the last chapter, I really go through what that would look like at each level, I think, how we can begin to start to move that needle forward. And one of the first things I think that needs to happen with that is just the acknowledgement that our educational system is perpetuating essentially a social caste system within our society, right? And it's intentionally doing it, and how it's built and its designs within its practices is intentionally perpetuating a racial social caste system that put black and brown students at the bottom. And then once we acknowledge that, then we accept that fact, because that is a fact, then we can start to really thoroughly audit our educational system in a way to start to dismantle that, right, and start to counter that and make it where all students can succeed in our educational system. And then lastly, I think then it's once we do that audit and once we start to figure out, okay, what are the ways that we can change our system to move it forward, then we start to implement, right, and we really actually start to put action behind the words and actually start to implement those things. And I will say that we do have schools, across the United States that are doing this work, but collectively there are still deep inherent issues within our educational system that are affecting millions of black and brown children as we speak.
His name is Brian Rashad Fuller. The book is titled Being Black in America's Schools, A Student, Educator, Reformer's Call for Change. Brian Rashad Fuller, I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your witness. Thank you for the text. And thank you for the conversation. All the best to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Tavis.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Hunter Biden has arrived in a Delaware federal courtroom for his firearms case. Jury selection is underway in the trial of the president's son. Biden is accused of illegally buying and possessing a gun while being addicted to drugs in 2018. Hunter's stepmom, First Lady Jill Biden, and half-sister Ashley Biden are in attendance at the courthouse as well. Well, a Michael Jordan basketball card is worth a lot of money. A 2003 through 2004 Upper Deck Ultimate Collection one-of-one Logo Man card sold for just over $2.9 million. It was the highest price for any Jordan card ever sold. The African-American basketball icon won 6 titles with the Chicago Bulls in the 90s. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Find the perfect Father's Day gift with Macy's Gift Finder. In just a couple clicks, you'll get personalized gift ideas for every dad at every budget. Visit Macys.com/gift finder and give love today at Macy's.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Simone Biles let the world know she's ready for the Summer Olympics this year in Paris. The four-time Olympic gold medalist won the all-around competition Sunday at the U.S. Gymnastics Championships for the 9th time in her career. The UCLA women's softball team was eliminated from the World Series. They lost to Stanford in the quarterfinals. UCLA finished a strong season at 43-12. The new ownership group of the NFL Washington Commanders, which includes Magic Johnson, is not going to deal with any drama from players or staff. The Commanders cut place kicker Brandon McManus a week after a lawsuit was filed against him by two women accusing him of sexual misconduct. The Washington franchise went through several allegations of sexual misconduct and harassment in the workplace under former owner Dan Snyder. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the fastest growing talk radio station in Southern California. Home to 50,000 watts and an audience reach of 12 million listeners. KBLA Talk 1580 is a pioneer for Black audio content, including our groundbreaking $2 million climate justice campaign and the most loyal, influential audience. According to an independent research study by the polling firm Aviterus, for the second consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the most trustworthy, reliable, and credible news source for Black audiences and beyond in Southern California. Let KBLA Talk 1580 power your advertising dollars. Our omni-channel custom marketing solutions are specifically tailored to connect with your ideal target audience. We leverage audio, podcasts, streaming, digital, social media, and local activations to get your message out to the Black community. Get in touch with our advertising team today at advertising@KBLA1580.com. That's advertising@KBLA1580.com. KBLA 1580. We've got you Black.
Hush not, child, and don't cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Just move on up toward your destination. Though you may find from time to time complication.
I'm Tavis Smiley. Glad to have you hanging out with us today. What a great show it's been. We've been moving through these hours today. We're in our final hour now, and you're still hearing the music of Curtis Mayfield. Why? Glad you asked. June is Black Music Month, and every day this month we have a featured artist whose music we play all 3 hours of our program as we move through our various segments and our various guests. And today we kick off this month of Black Music Celebration with Curtis Mayfield. In this final hour today, two conversations on the B side of this hour. A conversation about why more Black folk are turning to alternative health. We'll talk about the physical and psychological toll that these diets are taking on our well-being, and we'll be introduced to a new wellness brand called D Herbs. The founder of that brand, A.D. Dolphin, will join us live in studio in just about 30 minutes. But we commence this hour with a familiar guest on this program. Honored to have him back. Former Nixon White House counsel John Dean to offer his unique take on Donald Trump's historic conviction. Many have made comparisons between Donald Trump and one Richard M. Nixon. Of course, the Watergate scandal forced Nixon out of the White House. Still others say that Trump is no Nixon, that he is, wait for it, far worse than Richard Nixon could ever have been. In case you didn't hear what Donald Trump had to say on Friday, before I get to John Dean, take a listen.
They're coming in from all over the world into our country. And we have a president and a group of fascists that don't want to do anything about it, because they could right now, today. He could stop it. But he's not. They're destroying our country. Our country is in very bad shape. And They're very much against me saying these things. They want to raise your taxes by 4 times. They want to stop you from having cars with their ridiculous mandates that make it impossible for you to get a car or afford a car, but make it very possible for China to build all of our cars. It's a very serious problem that we have. We just went through one of many experiences where we had a conflicted judge, highly conflicted. There's never been a more conflicted judge. Now, I'm under a gag order, which nobody's ever been under. No presidential candidate's ever been under a gag order before. I'm under a gag order, nasty gag order, where I've had to pay thousands of dollars in penalties and fines and was threatened with jail. Think of it. I'm the leading candidate. I'm leading Biden by a lot, and I'm leading the Republicans to the point where that's over. So I'm the leading person for president, and I'm under a gag order by a man that can't put 2 sentences together, given by a court, and they are in total conjunction with the White House and the DOJ, just so you understand. This is all done by Biden and his people. And maybe his people more importantly. I don't know if Biden knows too much about it.
John Dean, I'm laughing, even though this is not laughable, but the part about that, I mean, we could pick this thing apart if we had the time, but for Donald Trump to be calling Biden and his team the fascists, if that ain't the pot calling the kettle black, I don't know what is, John Dean.
That's some really upside-down projection.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, man. First of all,
that's what he wants to be. He wants to be a dictator.
Yeah.
And so he thinks everybody else does, too.
Yeah. First of all, it is good to hear your voice. It's been too long. I always appreciate conversation with you. How have you been, for starters, my friend?
I've been well.
Good.
Aging gently.
There you go, aging gently. I like that, aging gently. So let me just jump right in with a couple of broad questions, and then we'll get more specific. So I haven't talked to you in a little while. So my broad question is, what have you made of all of this mess and the situation that Donald Trump finds himself in? Broadly speaking, what do you make of it? What's your read, John Dean?
He makes Richard Nixon look like a choir boy. It is true.
Yeah.
What we thought once was a gray and dark presidency looks pretty good today. So he's done Richard Nixon a historical favor by being who he is. Mm-hmm. And God forbid he ever get back in the Oval Office. We're in deep trouble.
Yeah. I said earlier, there are many who have made comparisons between Nixon and Trump. There are many others who have said that Trump is no Nixon. He's far worse. I take your point about him making Richard Nixon, Donald Trump, that is, making Nixon look like a choir boy. How bad is it? When I say far worse, how far, I made up a word, how far worse is it?
It is much far worse than we can imagine. For example, I can't imagine Richard Nixon sleeping with a porn star and then paying hush money for it. It just doesn't. I can't even conjure the image. The other thing is Nixon actually had a conscience. That's why he resigned. That's why he left office. He really didn't want to put himself, his family, or the country through an impeachment proceeding when it was clear he couldn't survive one. So Trump is just the opposite. Of course, he doubles down on everything. Loses an election, says he actually won. Loses in court, 34 convictions. Oh, it was rigged. He's actually got, as you know, Tavis, 3 more very serious felony cases he's confronted. And it's just a question of time before those play out. Yeah.
When we come forward, I want to come right to what John Dean said a moment ago, because this is the thing. He said that Richard Nixon actually had a conscience. Whatever one thinks of Richard Nixon, John Dean, who was his White House counsel, said that President Nixon had a conscience. I think it's clear to most of us that Donald Trump, if he has one, it's deep in the crevices somewhere. But what does it mean? Put another way, what are the consequences to our country having a president potentially who at this point has no conscience? What are the consequences to the country of having a president without a conscience? We'll talk about that part when we come forward. John Dean, as we continue celebrating June as Black Music Month and the music of one Curtis Mayfield on Tavis Smiley.
So in love
agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Have you not been feeling like yourself lately? Has your weight loss plateaued? If so, it's time to embrace the D-Herbs Full Body Cleanse, a cleansing regimen that can help you lose 10 to 30 pounds in just 20 days. The D-Herbs Cleanse also helps to boost immune system, improve mental clarity, clear up your skin, and improve your digestion. This cleanse is like a factory reset for your health. The Full Body Cleanse is a great way to propel you into a healthier lifestyle, and with summer just around the corner, never a better time than right now to initiate the weight loss and reboot your system. So go to dherbs.com and order your Full Body Cleanse today, or call 866-434-3727. D-Herbs, experience healing.
Cookie wants to be a professional wrestler.
I'm Cookie Serratos and I'm 11 years old.
She also wants to win all the medals. That's why Cookie and her family make every day count, squeezing out her best with Go-Go Squeeze.
Okay, Cookie, let's break for a Go-Go Squeeze.
Go-Go Squeeze Fruit on the Go pouches are a nutritious snack made from 100% fruit with no sugar added.
Go, Cookie!
Because when you nurture your kids, you squeeze out the best in them. Squeeze out the best with Go-Go Squeeze. Not a low-calorie food. Products range from 11 to 13 grams of sugar and 60 to 70 calories per serving.
Medicare Fraud Prevention Week focuses on the actions everyone can take to prevent Medicare fraud, errors, and abuse. Learn how to protect yourself and your loved ones by joining the Senior Medicare Patrol, or SMP, for Medicare Fraud Prevention Week, June 3rd through the 9th. Learn more at snpresource.org or by calling 1-877-808-2468.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer whenever I want? Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. 94% of Sleep Number smart sleepers report better sleep. JD Power ranks Sleep Number #1 in customer satisfaction with mattresses purchased in-store. And now save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. For JD Power 2023 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com.
Getting quality employees to fill positions in your company is essential, but finding those people can be a major hassle unless you use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes finding quality people a breeze. ZipRecruiter's advanced technology identifies candidates with the right skills, sends you great matches, then you can easily invite them to apply. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See for yourself. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/free to try ZipRecruiter for free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Made fresh daily in Lamert Park,
Los Angeles, California.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
I always love the month of June because I am, as you probably already know, a music lover. I have such eclectic music taste in my playlist. You might laugh at all the stuff in my playlist. A little bit of everything. But June is Black Music Month, and throughout this month, we'll be playing some of the best that our people, black folk, have ever produced. And we'll cover all the genres, trust and believe. R&B and hip-hop and gospel and jazz and folk, blues, etc., etc. We'll cover all the gamut in this month of June. Every day a different artist. I again always look forward to June because it's a lot of fun to weave in so much good music throughout the month as we celebrate the artistic genius of so many black artists down through the years. We continue now our conversation with former White House counsel John Dean. We've been talking about these comparisons that some are making between Nixon and Trump. And John Dean said earlier, and I could not agree more, that Donald Trump makes Richard Nixon look like a choir boy. I got a question about that when we move forward. The same can be said of Donald Trump versus George W. Bush, who many accused of war crimes with regard to going into Iraq, looking for those weapons of mass destruction that we never found. Many regard that as a weapon of mass distraction, what George W. Bush did. But I was just reading some numbers not long ago, John. I made this point the other day in another conversation, that when George Bush left the White House, George W. Bush, I'll get back to Nixon in a second. When George W. Bush left the White House, He left with the lowest popularity rating, the lowest poll numbers of any modern president. That's how low George W. Bush's numbers were. Let me take you back right quick. We went into Iraq, as I said a moment ago, never found those so-called WMDs. George W. Bush, I remind you, was the one who left all these black folk to die on rooftops after Hurricane Katrina. Don't get me started on the Bush years. And for all those reasons and more, he left the White House with the lowest approval rating of any president in modern history. Wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. George W. Bush's numbers are now in the mid to high 60s, depending on what poll you look at. His approval numbers are now in the mid to high 60s. It ain't like the storyline on his presidency changed over the last number of years. My view is that George W. Bush's numbers have risen in part because he left office, he stayed quiet, he minded his business, he'd been sitting in his room painting his pictures. I ain't mad at him about that. But I also believe that those numbers have risen in part because, as compared to Donald Trump, George W. Bush looks like a choir boy. Your thoughts on that's just my assessment. Your thoughts on that on that notion, John Dean, that as compared to Donald Trump, every Republican president or every president period looks better in the rearview mirror.
Tavis, you're absolutely right. There may be there may be one exception. I have a little trouble with Buchanan following the Civil War when he screwed up the Reconstruction. But no question that Trump is the worst president we've ever had. I don't really have high esteem for the Bush-Cheney years. I did a book called Worse Than Watergate at that time.
We talked about it. Yeah.
We did. I did one of your shows with that book, and that book was a big seller because people thought it was appropriate. And the reason I thought it was worse than Watergate was the extreme secrecy of the Bush-Cheney years. Plus, I can't imagine Richard Nixon ever authorizing torture, which is a war crime, as Bush-Cheney did.